Salam alaikum, kif halek, kaifakum shlonik, shalom, Ramadan Kareem. Shout out to my partner Ronnie. My name is Alex. I am the CEO of Orca Oshi Capital Management, and I decided to do a deep dive into credit in America because I find the credit in America to be one of the most instrumental things that anyone in the financial sector should be evaluating. So let's get to it. 230 million Americans are homeowners with a mortgage balance average of $241,815. Americans carried credit card balances averaging in 7,932 at the end of 2023. And we all know the average credit card balance is America. We've broken history at $1.13 trillion of credit card debt. Big yikes when 170 million consumers carry a balance on their credit card. 1 in 4 Americans with debt are putting less money toward the credit card payments, and 49% of Americans are carrying a month-to-month. More than all 6% of all credit card balances are in serious delinquency. And I have so many notations. I'm a voracious reader. Therefore, I did not want to miss any of this. And I actually did take my ADHD medicine. So do not come for me if I'm a bit more boring. Serious card delinquencies, payments that are 90 days or more overdue, jumped more than 50%. It's giving red flags. 79 million Americans are using buy now, pay later. So we have 230 million homeowners, and 79 million Americans using buy now, pay later. We have a population of 330 million plus, but the math is not on America's side for the average American. 39% foreclosures up, 39% up. Now, U.S. commercial real estate foreclosures are up 97% from last year and 17% month to month. The U.S. bank profits dropped in Q4 of 2023 a mere 44% because the big firms covered failed bank costs. Now, a great question to be asking yourself right now is, who's owning the commercial mortgage-backed securities, the mortgage-backed securities, slabs, student loan asset-backed securities? And are we heading in the right direction with America carrying 34 trillion on the debt clock and counting? It might have even just gone up before the video ends. I'm sure it has. So the Federal Reserve has closed the emergency bank lending program on March 11th. It's expired. And the commercial real estate sector, due to the high interest rates, have led to unrealized losses because, well, finance. And I can't help but just laugh and say big yikes, because it's one thing to write this down. It's another thing to present it to the world and yet sit here and act as though America has its you-know-what together. Okay, but of course, skittish depositors do not want to put money in banks, especially after the rapid collapse and the anniversary of the bank collapses of last year, which no one seems to be talking about. Now, I want to say this. Jerome Powell, inflation was never transitory. Janet Yellen, inflation was never transitory. We didn't believe you. In fact, I'm merch line dropping soon. I will t-shirts. Inflation was never transitory. Now, I do believe Jerome Powell when he was in his committee hearing, when he did say, and quote unquote, more bleeding for smaller and medium-sized banks, quote and quote. I wanted to make sure I read that properly. And the issues referred to by Jerome Powell are due to heightened risks associated with, guess what? Commercial real estate losses. And we all know what happens when we go from macro to micro or micro to macro in regards to a domino effect. Let's keep going, shall we? The risk is most pronounced with small and regional banks since they hold 70% of commercial real estate loans across the system. The U.S. money supply is making history. Here we go again with more history and firsts. Since the Great Depression, and it implies, arguably, if you are someone like myself who was a voracious reader with no friends and nothing but time on your hands, this happened 5 times in relation to the M2 and going all the way back to 1870. There have only been 5 meaningful declines in the M2 money supply. 4 of those drops were associated with deflationary depressions. Now, I want to now pivot to the stock melt up. That's what I've nicknamed it. Because in my humble, personal, hypothetical, alleged, emerging manager opinion, we are already in a recession. But because my generation cannot handle trigger terms, people are nuancing their way around it. And I am convinced that if social media were to go down for perhaps more than an hour or two, people might actually then realize we are not a healthy nation financially. And that is to say it as nicely and professionally as possible. The S&P, a hypothetical, allegedly air quotes, because I have a different opinion, but we'll just go with what the people with luxury branded degrees that still do not understand, and I have to correct this. The Federal Reserve does not print the money. If I see this, how is it? Can we start flagging again for misinformation? The Fed does not print the money. They're in charge of monetary policy. The assets are held in SOMA in the New York Federal Reserve. The Treasury, Miss Janet Yellen, the Treasury prints the money. That's part of fiscal policy. How these financiers are able to give such, I'm going to just hold my breath and not swear, misinformation, I'll use that word for maybe the first time in my life, is mind-blowing. I'm shocked these people have not been laid off. We're seeing record number layoffs again, historical record numbers of layoffs, and yet the jobless claims seem to be like the magic school bus books that we used to read in school to try to teach us things without going too deeply. And then what is it? Miss Frizzle, I think? If you're a millennial, let me know. S&P 500, yeah, sure, it's hit record highs. But let me tell you something. As someone that's been in digital assets way before Elon Musk and as a humble corn farmer, to my fellow humble corn farmers, we know that seeing a $73,000 Bitcoin means especially linear to the stock market. When it's not linear to the stock market, I get excited. When it's linear to the stock market, I say, big yikes. Being 25% of investors in America are retail investors. Now, as not to say or discount the intellect. However, since COVID, it has seemed that my generation particularly loves to brag about losing money. I can't understand that, being that I was raised, what can I say? I'm a stereotypical Jew, so that just does not make sense to me, but I digress. Bitcoin liquidations, hypothetically, allegedly, I always say, whenever we see these types of all-time highs, especially because I'm seeing exchanges allow leveraging to an absurd amount that I will not even repeat it because it feels like financial heresy. A Bitcoin linear to the stock market does not excite me. It gives me big red flags and anxiety. So humble corn farmers, make sure to hypothetically, allegedly, care for your crops and make sure to prune your roses. Just thought I'd throw that in there. And as a contrarian, hypothetically, allegedly, I'm not minding the melt up. I'm enjoying watching JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, who was part of the Troubled Asset Relief Program of 2008. I think he sold 150 million shares for the first time of ever taking over the bank. He's done a very, very nice job. I think he's spot on with many of his statements he's made recently in regards to the political climate in America. But Mr. Dimon, good for you. Jeff Bezos, sold, I think, 8.5 billion. Mark Zuckerberg sold $500 million of Meta, 1.5 billion to the Waltons, which is chump change. But I do not know at what point the Americans will not put down the TikTok, which I would love to see a ban. I am not on TikTok. I find it to be some sort of brainwashing experiment. Ick. If anybody were to ask me my ick, that would be one of them, aside from the financial illiteracy and the lack of personal accountability people seem to take. Because I want to remind you all of something, and many people do not seem to be aware of this. Japan just hit a recession, yet their stocks just hit all-time highs. So the stock market does not reflect the actual economy. Granted, Masa with SoftBank, I will always give credit where credit is due. What a remarkably amazing man. I just had to shout out SoftBank because I think the brilliance that has come from SoftBank is one that is not to be ever not spoken of when possible. But speaking of international affairs and stock market in Japan going up while their economy went into a recession, the Red Sea, only grain apparently shipping from the Black Sea and crossing the Red Sea, which is a big yikes, being that, we'll just keep it at that. Just remember, the wheat supply of the world, the majority of it was held by China before Ukraine was invaded. Ukraine that also has ports and the gases that semiconductors require. I'll keep going. Container rates have hit $10,000. Oh gosh, did I read my notes? Yep, hit $10,000 as ocean freight inflation soars in the Red Sea crisis, and as God would have it, the Panama Canal traffic cut by more than a third because of the drought. Most people don't even know the Panama Canal is in a drought. And due to the snowstorms in California recently, I'm not sure if you all saw all of the trucks and whatnot just either knocked off or chilling. I don't know the proper terminology, but big yikes. Aside from the Texas wildfires that harmed so much beef, more than likely cattle prices and beef are going to see a tick up. But who's counting, right? When you have things such as buy now, pay later, and it's not regulated, I guess people are out of sight and out of mind, because there's the new term called doomsday spending, where for some reason people, again, my age, and I apologize on behalf of my generation, believe it's just a good idea to go blow money fast and crank those credit cards all the way up. I still don't know what people were doing not paying their student loans. They had 3 years. Emerging market growth remains solid, ironically, with BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, with India being the fastest paced economy still on the record. I will argue that the Middle East sovereign wealth funds are going to be one of the best, and most likely the Middle East will prosper from this. The United Arab Emirates running pilot programs, the Enbridge, is that proper? Yes, sure. And then also you see the trade between China and Russia and the de-dollarization project. I encourage all of you to go read. With that said, I'm going to end this just reminding you all to keep a virtual private network on your phone. With all of the hacks and attacks, I am sure we will see many more, especially with a border that is wide open for a lot to love, including losing all of our freedom. And that is what I will leave you with. My generation really messed up when we said, not we actually, so I won't include myself, but the idea of freedom to free stuff, meaning take all the rights away, just give us the free stuff. And one more thought for food for thought. Many people don't realize places like Harvard and MIT are nonprofits. So would it be possible if many of these students that complain about such high tuition for luxury branded degrees that they don't need could write off their college debt? It's a question, asking for a friend. And again, for those that remember, if you don't hold it, you do not own it. So a hypothetical alleged piece of Alex B advice would be, remember, keep your wallets cold, keep your keys and mnemonic seed memorized. It's worth the memory, and it's worth just training your brain. And gold and silver have never hit zero in all of humanity. With that said, I believe that America is going to see a Great Depression, and the market melt up is nothing more than a combination of easy liquidity due to emergency lending, corporate buybacks, and a bunch of smart private equity men with whom all I look up to. Ana habag te amo bisu subachi.